Hello and welcome to Weekly Open. My name is Brian. We got everybody here today. It is myself and Don and Cred looking at charts once again this Monday. Don, how you doing?
Good. Enjoying the weather. Trying to not look at the market and failing, but yeah, doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Cred, what's up, man?
Not the market.
That is
Depends where you look, of course, but yeah. And also it's a busy week. It's one of those CPI, FOMC, GFY, HFSP type of
That's
weeks.
what we needed.
Yeah, exactly what we needed. Lots of headlines on top of the ones we've already had. So that'll be fun. And also, didn't altcoins rug like 5 minutes after we went off air last week, and then extra rugged?
I was about to say, yeah, there was some rugging last week, and right after we got off the air was when the Binance news dropped.
Yes, that's it.
Which affected altcoins significantly more than Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Mm-hmm.
And then last night, alts in particular, or not last night, this weekend, alts in particular dumped super hard.
Yeah, I was staying up for that. I was watching it because my life is really bad, and it was at like 5 a.m. So I'm just like staring at the screen, and I see BTC down like 2% or something. I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of bleeding down. And I look at the rest of the watch list. I see 20-30%, like literally 10 times. And I just found that, that was really weird.
I was not paying attention to alts for the first bit of it, and then I saw something on my feed, and I looked at the Bitcoin price and saw it was down. That was, it wasn't like, oh my gosh. And then I started scrolling, and I was like,
it's like 20-30%. Yeah,
like across the board. It wasn't, it wasn't like isolated even to a sector. It looked like the market maker was exiting all markets.
Yeah, well, thing is, you have like the weekend liquidity that's already lower, right? And then you have the overnight session liquidity that's lower on top of that. And then all this news as well. Whoever, it was a terrible time to unwind whoever or whatever that entity was. But, clearly some urgency. You don't really care as long as you can get liquidity. You do it when you have to, not when you want to.
I don't understand why that occurs on the weekend so often. But yeah, it clearly looked like a coordinated de-risking by probably at the beginning a single individual, and then kind of worked its way down into the side effects. But I mean, in 5 minutes, some major altcoins were down 20+%.
Yeah, it was insane. Also, can we what do you think about this point, just as a random tangent? Because BTC and ETH were down like 2% and 5%, right? And alts were down like 20-30%. Is it reasonable at this point, if anyone's clinging to it, to like not call ETH an altcoin and call it like a major or something of that nature? Or do you think that's like an ideological distinction more so than a market or price-based one? Because for me, I never I get the argument of there's Bitcoin and there are altcoins, but the way I sort of look at it now, there are majors, which are BTC and ETH, and then there are altcoins. I'm wondering if your guys' framework has shifted over the years, at least from 2017.
I've believed that for at least the last 2 years. And the ETH BTC pair has also proven that out, I believe.
I mean, I think it's still an altcoin, but it's also major. Like, I would say it's both.
It's a major altcoin.
No, but it's basically like Bitcoin is its own category, and ETH is kind of like the altcoin leader in a way, like what Bitcoin was for the market back in the day. That's altcoin now, not altcoin, that's ETH now for the altcoins. I would still call it an altcoin because it is an altcoin. But I mean, it doesn't really change anything. It is trading differently than all the other altcoins, which, I mean, I like the distinction between like majors and the small kind of shitty altcoins. But for me, it's still an altcoin. I don't really I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to like take it out of that basket. But yeah, doesn't really make a difference at the end of the day anyway.
My entire body does not think that this was a bottom for alts, but isn't that kind of how bottoms are made? Like,
I mean, I don't know. Like, yes, but also like, who the fuck's gonna buy it? Like, I legit have problems thinking about people or thinking about like bigger players that are ready to buy altcoins right now. And I mean, that is the most bottomy argument I've ever made. At the end of the day, like every time someone's like, who the fuck is gonna buy, it's the bottom. But I usually don't say it and I'm saying it right now. So I don't know,
These
maybe it's
types of
different, but
wicks we talked about. I mean, I don't like. Apparently, we talked about this because we talked about spiking below. I don't know. Just in a vacuum, it obviously looks like trash, but it always looks like trash at the bottom, you know? And just there's no excitement about alts in any capacity. Who wants to own them? They're super illiquid, and it's just
but they're still very, very expensive, right? Like market cap wise, the market caps are still massive when you think about it. Like that's the problem that I have with that argument is no one wants to own them, but people apparently don't feel ready to sell either because market caps are fucking enormous still. When I look through the list, like for what they do at the end of the day, right? Because none of this shit does anything at like when you think about it. So like you look at the market cap and it's all based on promises, and the fact that it's based on promises and is still this valuable is quite hard for me to kind of be like, okay, yeah, no one wants to own them. Technically, yes, but also no one wants to sell them because apparently people are not ready to sell it to price levels where it actually makes sense.
It's okay, Don. Robin Hood will sell them for you, apparently, and that seems to be the new way of doing things. The auto conversion, yeah, that's great.
Oh yeah, but that didn't Binance update its TOS to be able to, like, if they delist something, they can sell your coins for you.
Yeah,
if you don't.
I think that was the update. Yeah.
Oh, so that's interesting. Speaking of Binance, the news came out, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes after we went off air last week that the SEC is suing Binance and also alleges quite a bit of sketchy activity at Binance, with including quotes from their like chief compliance officer.
So good.
Yeah, pretty bad. Yeah, so good or bad, depending on which way you look at it.
It's funny as fuck, and honestly, like I've had a lot of contact with Binance people over the years, right? And this is exactly the kind of language they would use. I know people working at Binance, right? So I'm 0% shocked, but it's obviously horrendous for the industry, right? So it's really funny to me on one level, and it's really sad on another. I don't know how to reconcile those, but it doesn't really make us look any better. Let's say it that way.
What do y'all think about BNB in this scenario? Like, well, and also, can Binance, I mean, as the largest exchange in the world by magnitudes from a volume perspective, can they just ignore the US forever and still be just fine? Is question number one. And two, looking at this BNB chart, does it get you excited to own BNB?
Do you know what that BNB chart reminds me of? There was a tweet response to it might have been Do Kwon or one of the peg type things where someone just said, please do anything you need, even illegal things to maintain the peg. And it just feels the same way at this 220 support. It's like, can you just do whatever you have to, legal or illegal, to hold that level? Because
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's what that feels like. Sort of last, 220. There's something poetic that the FTT level was $22, and this is like 220-ish. And there's sort of nothing below, at least from a technical perspective.
I mean, it is a complete air gap down to $50.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't really think, and this could be like the very midwit take, but I'm not gonna buy BNB, just based on the fact that I think like the US is gonna go after like exchange coins quite hard. I think if they're like going after the exchanges, like the exchange coins is kind of the obvious target, and I just rather trade other things. I don't know where BNB is gonna go. Like if Binance doesn't completely get wrecked, which I'd be surprised by. This is actually the exact same language I used for FTX as well. But so take it with a grain of salt. But I'd be surprised if Binance got into major trouble where they like turns out they don't have the money from people. Like very, very surprised. Don't think that's gonna happen. But like why take the risk, especially right now? Like I don't really see the point. It's not like this is like extraordinary down, right? Like if we were trading at 100 and this was basically we're trading at 100 because the FUD's like insanely strong and everyone's freaking out and everyone's getting liquidated, then I'd be like, hey, maybe I want to buy this thing because if it bounces, it can easily go to 200 or maybe even 300. But right now, it's basically just back at levels where it was previously during like massive kind of uncertainty. And I like it when it just blows up for no reason, like when it makes no sense to blow up, and I get it cheap. Or I like it when it's like a certain bet, which I mean BNB has felt like for quite a while, but I don't like it like this. So I'm not gonna touch it at all. I wouldn't even short it. Like I've seen a bunch of people shorting it on Binance, and I'm like, you guys are like, why? Like if it's the same as the people that shorted FTT on FTX, right? Like it's so fucking stupid.
Unlimited profit, and then by the time you can take your W, there's nowhere to take it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get paid out. Like, what are you going to do with your profits if they're stuck on the exchange and exchange is insolvent? Like, even if you're right, you lose, which is just the worst.
I dislike that the SEC did the back-to-back suit with Binance and Coinbase, because it's almost like they treated them as equal to one another. But the relative charges for Binance and Coinbase are significantly different. Like one is talking about enabling, money laundering or whatever, like terrorism arguments and that kind of stuff. And the other one is listing securities. Anyway, all that came out last week. Everybody already knows those stories. I'm just curious what effects you think they're going to have. Do you think that that was related to the dump that we had this weekend? The either Coinbase or Binance news, somebody essentially just saying, I'm opting out of this.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Like an institutional player basically saying.
I don't know exactly who this was or like why, but I mean, it would just make sense to me. If you're seeing like all of this shit going on and you're just like, hey, I have so much exposure to this, it's an illiquid market, right? And it is all of these altcoins. Like if you sell them while they're dropping, especially if it's like bigger size, like you're not going to get a good price for it. There's not going to be enough liquidity for you to sell. So I could very well see that someone was just like, hey, there might be something worse coming, and I'm more than happy to just get out of these coins. I could also see someone just take advantage of the fact that everyone's spooked, but like everyone was spooked after the news, but not that many people sold. Prices were pretty decent all around still. And when that is the case, right, and you're like a bigger player and you see that everyone's on edge, like if you just sell enough, people will sell with you, and then you can just basically rebuy cheaper, do whatever you want, maybe short, take profit on the way down, like all that kind of thing. So I could also see just someone being smart, taking advantage of the situation. But it does feel like more like the former, as in like someone was just like, fuck this, I have too much exposure, I don't like where this is going, let me just pull the plug. But I don't know which one of the two, but yeah.
And it didn't take much, right? Given the liquidity conditions we outlined, we already had low volumes on centralized exchanges, plus it was the weekend, plus in the middle of the night. It's easy to infer like a larger magnitude to the selling, whereas in relative terms couldn't have been as large, but the impact was large because there was just no one in the books, right? So there's that as well. But in general, like the whole argument of who's coming in to buy, I agree with Don. It tends to be a hilarious kind of market turning point, like who's left to sell at the top and who's left to buy at the bottom type of thing. And it works like the other way around as well, for a slightly better signal. But like realistically, if you're trying to get into crypto now, the regulatory environment is by far the worst it's ever been. It's also very aggressive, and it also feels like your options are very limited insofar as everything being designated as a security. But also your counterparty risk is probably the highest it's been, with exchanges blowing up and the biggest ones having a target on their back. So it's like, how do I enter this space? Like, who are my counterparties going to be? And then even if I manage to cross that hurdle, what do I buy that's not going to go down 20-30% or potentially get delisted or be a security, apart from BTC and ETH? So you could make that type of argument, like a migration to the safe haven assets, whatever. But like more generally, it's a pretty tricky, if you want those types of large 2021 style inflows, the sort of exchange and regulatory landscape make it pretty difficult to make that argument.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Looking at the market caps, because Don, you got me curious. Number 43 is where you break below $1 billion valuation, and it looks like the FDV numbers mirror that pretty similarly. So, you do have a significant drop, like $1 billion valuations were handed out left and right. And now out of that top 43, there's a ton of like old legacy giant stuff that's still kind of a zombie coin or whatnot. And then also there's all the stables and staked wrappers and all that kind of stuff included in that. So there's probably only like, I don't know, 30-ish coins above $1 billion.
Yeah, but that
FTV.
seems a lot, no? Like to me anyway. And this is obviously from the standpoint that there's really not that much that this stuff is used for. Like if there would be use for a lot of this, like if this was just mainstream, like you go to the cinema, you pay with crypto, you kind of go to your shop in the street, you pay with crypto, you do like a bunch of shit, like everyone moves crypto from country to country. Like if that was all the case, right, I would look at this and be like, oh, this just makes sense, right? Like this is a whole asset class, it's used, whatever. But then you look at it and it's like Dogecoin with 8 billion, and you have like a bunch of other things that are like just like Shiba is still like 4, and you're like, why the fuck? Like what is this doing? And I don't think that necessarily makes sense from like a value kind of standpoint. But then again, this is the value standpoint never has mattered in crypto so far.
Yeah.
Like it's not really like that makes like a big difference. But the only problem is if we have kind of macro headwinds, right? I think that will matter. We've kind of had we've had tailwind for the last like pretty much since altcoins existed. And if we get it like if we just have a little bit of uncertainty in general in the market, I think this kind of stuff will matter. And you saw it with basically how VCs raise nowadays, right? There's basically no more money left for garbage. Barely anyone wants to spend their money. And then if you have that in the traditional markets, who's going to venture out and spend a shitload of money on a meme coin or on like something that doesn't really do anything? And I think that list is pretty limited. So beyond just short squeezes and kind of like you get like a 100-200% pump and then a full retrace, I don't really see how these valuation makes sense. But that's just my pessimistic take.
I mean, that's fair, right? On the VC front, I think 2023 has been one of the worst years so far in terms of fundraising compared to even 2022 and 2021, obviously. Crypto VC has been a disaster. And even then, if you're going to make that argument, they're not going to come in and buy your coins on secondary markets, really, are they? If anything, the whole raising for seed rounds and going for insane valuations, that type of behavior is going to get even more aggressive if the macro or whatever, the pie is smaller as a whole. You're going to want even better terms and more preferential agreements beyond just buying, the top 50 altcoins or whatever. That seems completely dead. I'm not as focused on just like market cap valuations for a lot of the big caps because I just feel like they're completely made up, if that makes sense. Like compared to the daily volume these things get, and they can just go down 20-30% on no like specific like news specific to that coin. Those have just felt completely made up to me for a while with these ghost chains, ghost coins, or I don't personally get much value from those. I feel like market cap is super useful for newer stuff. If you're looking at like FDV or like a meme coin, and you can sort of try to time the top based on when it gets into the top 100, top 50. But beyond that, yeah, if your framework is just kind of looking at the market cap of the top whatever, none of it has made any sense for a long time. And I think that's part of the furniture at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have a hard time identifying sources for like historical liquidity, but I think that would maybe be an interesting metric. But
it's so fleeting now, especially, right? Like the coin of the week or coin of the month has become coin of the week to coin of the day, and there's just nothing sticky flows wise when it comes to altcoins and narratives. And yeah, we've seen the most extreme PvP version of that. I mean, literally 2 weeks ago, you had Twitter completely filled with people shilling their own meme coins to their audience, right? That was the risk sentiment like 2-3 weeks ago. And now it's regulatory crackdown. No, altcoins were always a scam. It's just BTC and ETH, usually from the same people, which makes it slightly funnier, but that's sort of beyond the point. Also, just very quickly, if I can screen share this for a moment on the point of short squeezes and stuff like that. Let me see if I can bring this up. Can you see this?
It's, oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so the argument for short squeezes, I agree that it's like a pertinent market mechanic for a lot of these kind of mean reverty alts. But what you want to see generally, both with kind of open interest and delta, whatever you're looking at, is for price to diverge from new and aggressive participation in the market, right? So if you have like heavy, CVD going down or just lots of deltas that are negative, you want to see the market diverge from that and either absorb them or go sideways, right? So for example, if you have like a large seller pushing, a lot of deltas down, CVD, whatever measure you use, or for example, open interest going up with price going down, you want to see like some divergence between those two things. Whereas what we have been seeing with a ton of altcoins is essentially the aggressive positioning getting rewarded. And BNB, obviously a bit of an outlier example given the news, but that's just one example. Like you could be making short squeeze arguments based on the open interest pretty much since the market started breaking down, right? But none of that has been rewarded. It's just that aggressive positioning has been on side the entire time. So if you're going to make an argument for like larger sort of open interest unwinds or short squeezes or absorption, you want to see divergence between the metric you're looking at to gauge aggression, be that open interest or CVD or whatever, and price not following. But at the moment, we've seen that the aggressive positioning in a lot of altcoins has simply been tracking price as well. So the sellers are winning, so to speak, and you want to see some evidence of that sort of not working to catch a lot of short squeezes on those. And we've seen a few examples here and there, but generally, I think across the board for altcoins, a lot of the majors have broken down from 3-4 month ranges recently, right? Like if I can share another screen, hold on, let me try this.
And I think all that's fair. When I was talking earlier about is this how bottoms are made in alts, it's just because of how nasty some of the charts look,
for sure,
more than my desire to buy them.
No, of course. And in the short term, that's completely fine. But like if you look at this last weekly candle, right? Like the most recent move we had, for a lot of these altcoins, they've been ranging for like, this one's just look where this is. This is silly, right? But for a lot of these, they were either like soft trending or ranging for some period of time. And this just broke a bunch of stuff, right? Like 3-4 multi-month, multi-week ranges just getting completely hammered into the lows. So you could be playing bounces from those lows, but like bigger picture market structure wise, just look at this stuff. I'm just going through my watch list almost in alphabetical, literally in alphabetical order here, and it's just breakdown after breakdown after breakdown across whatever time frame or range or consolidation you're looking at. It's really bad. I think market structure wise for alts. That doesn't mean you can't play short term mean reversion scalpy type of stuff. That's always on the table when you get an outsized move like this. But like bigger picture, we've just seen like essentially an acceleration in what has been a trend in the preceding weeks and months, and that's with heightened counterparty risk. So I think outside of really well risk defined short term trading, a lot of alts just look completely fucked, frankly. Look at this, right? Like
the thing is, like a lot of these bounces that we had in the last few weeks now look like counter trend bounces in a larger trend bear market, right? Like we've had a massive bear market on the altcoins. You can see this, that basically all of them are just down only. And then you had 2 weeks of squeeze upwards on almost all of the coins that you kind of shown. And then it went back to the downtrend, right? So technically this downtrend, like for example, in Sand, what you just had open, you look at that, like that is a downtrend. And then we had a bounce. And then we just came back and restarted the downtrend, basically. Like that's just like a tiny, tiny bounce in a larger downtrend. It's scary to buy, right? Like because basically we're back at the lows where we were before. And I think if this wants to go up, it just wants to hold those lows and then range basically from the lows to the highs of that bounce for a while, kind of accumulate, and then maybe go up. But you're not going to get me to buy anything that doesn't have any narrative, because that's really the only thing that I've been doing, right? Like I've been trading the coins that have had a narrative, and you're not going to get me to buy anything that doesn't have a narrative, because all of this looks completely horrendous.
I wonder how much of it depends on follow through with declaring these coins securities and the fight over whether or not they are securities in the US, or how isolated they can actually be outside of the US, right? Like just ignore the US. The US is the new China. type of thing.
But
and
then
they
we have
operate
China and sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah,
then we
you're
have
fine.
China and the US, right? Like it's not just okay, and the US is the new China. It's technically like okay, now we have like two massive economies that are just kind of like anti-crypto, which I mean, one is like an outlier, two starting to be a trend, right? And I think that's where a lot of the worry comes from, where people are like they're kind of seeing the writing on the wall, which I don't necessarily think is fair because Europe is actually doing quite a bit in the crypto space. But I think that's like where a lot of people are get really worried because I mean, who's next, right? Like you have the US coming, you had China, India already had problems with crypto before. Like the more we get, the worse it gets, especially for altcoins. I think. I think that's where a lot of the kind of scary stuff comes from.
You know what's exciting in all of this is the S&P is making yearly highs, like 52-week highs.
Yeah.
Like we can have no fun. Do you remember when the FTX blow up occurred was also during a S&P rally? And so we missed out on kind of that whole correlated move. And now here we are again. Look at that. That's a monthly chart. So I guess we're only halfway through, but that's quite a monthly. That's
okay. Pico top resistance here, Ledger. It's over. This is the Wall Street cheat sheet, lower high echo bubble.
Hey,
before we
for
go
a
to zero.
long time, I've thought 4,300 was the tag to make on the S&P. So I should be out at this point. Not that I have a lot of exposure to the S&P, but
yeah, we all wish we had more exposure to the S&P and less to crypto.
Yeah. I know. It's unbelievable. But yeah, it's not good because if that does turn over, we'll probably somehow manage to become correlated to it again. You know, we're decorrelated because we're off, getting sued left and right amongst our industry. And then when the S&P dumps, it's like, well, I certainly don't want to own crypto then.
Yeah, it's like the most bearish correlation, right? We enjoy none of the upside and every fart to the downside. We're all on board. So, yeah, I would have loved if crypto, like if we didn't have all this insider selling and the news, etc. We have S&P at monthly resistance, and then BTC hit like 35K monthly resistance as well. And then you get like a macro opportunity to risk off or reassess. That would be cool, but we didn't get that because this did its job, and Nasdaq did its job, and risk in general did its job, but crypto is so heavy that we kind of got stuck in the same range. And while this was doing this, we were kind of just like bleeding down. And so if this starts to reverse, my expectation is that we puke. I didn't think the argument, at least in my mind, it's not the case that we'll stop looking at macro because we've decoupled. I think the case is we've decoupled from the upside because we have extra sellers, if you will. But then if this starts to puke, those extra sellers will just kind of hit it harder, if you will. So that doesn't help at the very least. So you'd want this to be FUD and for the market to just keep pushing. But I find that somewhat unlikely into the summer and into the end of the year for this just to, come and make a new high or something. That's not my base case, but happy to be wrong, as they say on crypto Twitter, right?
Happy to be wrong.
This is a bottom conversation, says Charlie. Yeah, it's completely possible that it is. But I'd like to see some evidence of that from the market first and foremost, because even BTC, right? If you take a very almost pedestrian view of this thing, regardless of what time frame you're looking at, it's just been bleeding, right? Like I can literally draw like a downtrend line through this thing of making lower highs and lower lows on the weekly time frame. I mean, look at this. I'm not making it up, right? This is what it looks like. This is a downtrending weekly structure, and the same on the daily. This is a downtrending daily structure, and that's while, this is the daily chart and this is the weekly. And that's while risk assets have been looking like this. Completely different. Like the last 3-4 weeks in the S&P have been breakout weeks. I mean, Nasdaq very much speaks for itself. Meanwhile, among this, we've just been downtrending quite technically. And also, I don't like to fade slow or boring markets because that tends to be pretty dangerous. So if you want to get me on side as a bull, the way this consolidation needs to resolve is either just by puking into support and accelerating, because acceleration tends to be a much better mean reversion play than a bleed, or actually shift market structure, make a higher high, and then I can look for a higher low to push. But like just fading the bleed week on week hasn't been particularly
good way to feel pain.
Yeah. And whatever green candles we have had have just been traps on all occasions so far, especially after this break in market structure here. This reclaim attempt fizzled out. This bounce post SEC fizzled out as well. It's just, it hasn't been sticky, So I keep going back to the weekly and the daily and just being able to draw this essentially and think, okay, can this go away? Basically, I'm not asking for a lot, right? Asking for at least a slowdown in the downtrend while risk assets have been doing well, but the market hasn't been able to offer that. And again, my broader concern as well, that I'm not sure how much counterparty risk I want at this exact moment in time, especially if I'm taking on that risk to buy the dip on a downtrend. Not
when you say counterparty risk, you mean of what sort?
Holding funds on exchanges beyond the minimum amount required for short-term trading strategies.
Yeah,
that's
exchange risk. I think also you look down the line, there's just coin risk itself. Like you just
everything is a security,
yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, if you could love Solana tech and think, oh, I'm going to buy Solana, when it goes to $5 finally, like the plan has been, and then it ends up on like some kind of securities token only exchange, and then the liquidity profile goes to zero. Yeah. One thing I think the regular market's been more efficient at, as in the stock market, is like letting the losers die. So Zoom is a good example. This is not participating in that NASDAQ rally. Like the strongest companies are participating. And even when you look around, like Google's doing okay, but the old correlations are not exactly there. Like Amazon, I guess, is doing okay, but it's not even 50% retraced from the top. But the ones that have these massive narratives, like Nvidia, making all-time highs, Apple close to all-time highs, I believe. So there's this that dispersion amongst kind of the participants and who's dragging the market up and what that looks like. And crypto, I think, has had a harder time of that, where we're still not seeing these like significant narratives where strong coins are doing particularly better outside of Bitcoin and ETH, which are still going down. Like maybe they're doing better than altcoins, but they're still going down, to your point. Or maybe there's just no coins that qualify. I don't know. Somebody on Twitter was talking about how like, oh, you think this is the worst bear market ever? Did you not participate in meme season and Kanto and all this stuff? And I'm like, come on, it doesn't seem real to me.
Yeah. And also we just spent the last 2 months basically scamming each other, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like very
publicly,
very PvP stuff. And then even more so, to your point recently, of like people that just name tokens after themselves. Buy Ben.heat.
Yeah,
your friend Ben.
Your risk appetite, if you're a US person doing this like meme coin send money to me type of thing, must be through the bloody roof, right? Because like the SEC has decided to go for a scorched earth policy, and you're there essentially fundraising from US based people as a US based person. They're just sending money to your wallet, and you're sort of somewhat making promises. It's very hard to reconcile with any reasonable version of reality. But
I don't think they're thinking, honestly. They're just like, oh, free money, let's go. I mean, it's the last thing I would do as a US citizen, but all power to them.
Right.
Maybe we're gonna get rid of BitBoy this way.
Good luck. Is this a bottom conversation? Because the chat is understandably dragging us, and they may have a point. Well, what's the strongest bullish argument you can come up with? I think for me, it would have to be some version of we hear something really positive from the Ripple case, and then something really positive from the CPI, FOMC, HFSP, GFY macro stuff, and that could give us a bit of a squeeze. That would be cool, I think. But beyond that, it kind of doesn't look amazing, but it's on my radar, right? There's enough news this week that if it all kind of lines up to facilitate a bounce of sorts, so this could be a bottom conversation if that coin flip lands favorably, but I don't have any insider information on those outcomes and don't think many people do. So it's more of a wait and see type of thing. What do you think?
I mean, I just look at the market, right? Let's ignore everything we talked about and just look at the market. And the charts, basically. You look at the weekly time frame, and that just broke new lows. We broke below support, and I mean, kind of like usually when you have a fake breakdown, you come back up strong, especially if it's on the weekend. So we're gonna have to wait and see how today goes. But if today doesn't just kind of reclaim the weekly that we just lost, we're technically trading below the lows. Made a new one, still quite a bit from support. So like that's not really helping the case. And then you look at the daily time frame, and we broke the range. Like we broke the range, and this is something that I absolutely hate. We broke the range that we had, reclaimed it the next day, and then like had the perfect squeeze set up, because this really, like, the bears that shorted basically the lows were by the balls, and nothing happened, right? They got bailed out because the market was too weak to squeeze them. So I don't really see any evidence of this actually wanting to go up right now. Now that could obviously change, and this could be a bottom conversation. Yes, always. But just because I'm negative on the market doesn't mean I want to buy it. Like, that's the most stupid thing I've ever heard, right? Like, I've seen a bunch of people be like, yeah, you're not buying because you're fearful, therefore it's good buy. And I'm like, what the fuck? Then I would always be buying, right? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, I want to be buying stuff when it either has a good setup, when I have a good reason to buy it, beyond the setup, or like in general, like if there's a good narrative or something like that, right? But I don't have anything. Like, I don't have anything here. Like, this is not support to me. Like, we're in the middle of nowhere. If we reclaim the old range, come back above like 26.3, then we can start talking about it. But even that would just kind of be more chop, or like in I think if I wanted to be careful, and I think I want to be, anything above 27.4, and then we start looking quite good. But until then, like, I'm not gonna fight for these. What is it like? I'm not gonna fight for these 7%. Like, I really don't give a fuck about these 7%, especially given we have like all this uncertainty. The SEC kind of having like a legit death match with crypto, basically. I mean, it seems like a personal vendetta at this point, and that can go quite far before it ends, I think. So I like to sit on the sidelines. I like to see people kill each other, and then I'll see if I can pick up the pieces at another time. Basically, that's kind of how I look at it. Whether this be the bottom or not, I don't care. Like, I cannot buy this because where the fuck would my invalidation be? My invalidation would be below 20K, and I don't want to buy 25 if my invalidation is 20 and my target is like 30, 31, 32, 33 maybe. No thanks.
I think there's an argument to make that Bitcoin is kind of the lowest risk profile of all these things. And Bitcoin dominance is reflecting that. This is a monthly chart that looks like a recovery of a 2-year alt season of sorts, or alt dominance. But if you look at the weekly version of that, pretty big candle last week after months of consolidation sideways. And this looks like it might push above 50% dominance. And this number is even more impressive than it looks because this does include stables and all that kind of stuff. I know it's an imperfect metric, but it's just something to keep an eye on to highlight that Bitcoin relative dominance when you see alts dumping like they did. But yeah, I agree with what both of y'all are saying. It's hard to get too excited. Probably bottom things, to the chat's point. But just even if it is bottom things, it doesn't mean that you're not in any hurry. Like, the one thing that you don't have to be in is a hurry.
Yeah, especially when the market's like drifting, right? I hate fading drift. Like that's just so dangerous, and just it's not like a good. There's rarely a good trade in fading drift, because the drift either reverses and that trade is better, or it accelerates. So if you faded it, you're dead, and you're missing out on the actual good trade that comes when it goes from drifting to forming some sort of impulse, right? So that's just not fun. But the logic Don outlined is quite funny. Essentially, because you have no reasons to buy, you should buy. It's like, I'm not sure. Like, I have some objections to that. But yeah, there's no rush really, and the market hasn't been in a rush either. I think in general, a lot of sort of technical traders, whether they admit it tacitly or not, they want to see some form of urgency, right? Like if you're trading reversals, you want to see a big move into a big level. If you're trend trading, you want to see trend continuation and basically aggressive takers forming that trend. And if the market's just drifting in one direction, then stepping in front of that isn't particularly fun. And this is the thing, right? You've probably seen it kind of defined as chop on crypto Twitter. That was a mouthful. But it's gone from 30K to 25. That's not chop. That's moving down, right? If it were chop, it'd be like 30, 31, 28, 29, 30. That's chop. But like just making lower highs and lower lows on the weekly, that doesn't qualify as chop. I mean, maybe in the grand scheme of things, it does, like on the monthly or something, but it's directional. Like I can draw a trend line through it. It's not sideways, kind of by definition, you know?
And certainly nothing here is easy. Like you don't just look at it and think, oh, this is such an easy market to trade.
No. The only market that's been easy is XRP.
The chat is asking us about it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Don, you're the spokesperson, right?
Yeah, but I mean...
yeah, but...
the funny thing is, like, this looks good still, right? Like, you look at this candle and you don't even realize that anything's happened. Like, look at this chart. Like, nothing's happened on the XRP USD chart.
Is there a decision tomorrow on that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not entirely sure what they decide, but something is getting done tomorrow. Honestly, like I don't have a position anymore. I'm kind of scared to hold into the whole thing, like especially given how crypto looks right now. But it's a good looking chart, right? It's the only chart that's been holding up. When everything was dumping 20%, I don't know if you guys checked it, but I was just curious. So XRP went down 4 or 6%, while everything else was 20, 30% down, and then recovered the fastest too. Like you just look at the daily chart, massive candle to the downside, immediate bounce, and it's kind of back where it was before. But yeah, going into the news, holding it, given how the market looks right now, that's too much for me. So I'm not holding it. I was considering it while it was nuking. I was considering buying it, but I was just like, I'm just gonna have a weekend instead. And now that it's over, right? Now that I didn't get the wick, basically, I don't know. It's a tough one, but I do like the chart still. It's the only chart in the altcoin world. Besides, I mean, a bunch of people in the chat will probably link one chart of a scam or a pump and dump that's been going up, and they're gonna be like, "But this looks good too." But but this is like one of the only charts that I see that actually looks good, and that is definitely interesting. It's the saddest world where we rely on XRP to pull us out of the dump. Like that's just the saddest thing in the world. It's not necessarily a market that you want to be trading. Like if we rely on XRP to do well, for this market not to disappear, not the biggest fan, to be honest.
So where I want to end our conversation is just to pay homage to something that's coming up before the next time that we talk, which is the bet by Balaji for $1 million BTC at the beginning of the term. On March 17th, one Bitcoin was roughly 26K. Today, almost 90 days later, the length of the bet, the price of Bitcoin is just under 26K. So congratulations to him on the clout chasing and attention whoring and losing $1 million in the dumbest possible way. But yeah, there you go.
The price is being manipulated. It's being suppressed. The government is lying about inflation, Ledger. So he's the real winner. You should know better.
The chat says they settled that bet earlier. I understand they settled the bet. The identification of the bet was almost 90 days ago now. And I'm not ignoring the stupidity of the bet just because he went ahead and paid it out because he knew it was stupid and attention seeking.
Yeah, well, his whole thing was I burnt $1 million to show you that they're printing trillions, and then the S&P rallies like
congratulations.
I mean, that's like the meme where it's like someone behaving like an idiot. And do you guys know this? Like,
yes, I know exactly the one. Yeah,
like someone behaving like an idiot, and then walking away, and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy is an idiot," and then he's thinking, "I was just like fooling with them." That kind of meme.
Yeah.
That's exactly what this kind of looks like and sounds like. So yeah, good job to him. That's
good job and good riddance. Not the whole thing drove me crazy. It was so cheap and easy to just grab all this attention with this hyperbolic statement. And it's like it could have just been done in so many other ways that didn't make me cringe endlessly. But here I am. And here I am talking about it yet again. So
it worked, Ledger. You're the proof that it worked.
I'm the proof that it worked, but
yeah,
count me out.
I still think meme coin season was a lot worse than this. Like people legit just scammed each other for a month and it was fine. It was completely normal, and like it was probably a net loss for like 98% of people. And all decorum and all standards just went out the window. And it was people straight up scamming each other. And then all alts nuked like 20-30%. And those probably nuked way harder. And we're just glossing over it because there's other stuff to pay attention to. It's kind of insane.
Yeah. I imagine some of those people are going to end up having to pay. They obviously take their time, authorities and whatnot. So if they choose to really go after people, then if someone's an American was asking for money in that capacity, I don't know. Seems like a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, this is quite a chart. Pepe down 80% now.
On the way to 99.
Yep. And this is log chart. So if you turn off log chart, it looks beautiful. But obviously still, I mean, it went up a lot, right? But like that's how these things work. They go up a lot and then people start buying, right? Like I think most people actually bought way, way higher than, like I always see these people be like, oh, it's up 1000x and now it's down like 80%. We're still winning. But as if you bought that, right? Like the people that actually bought into this thing and it's still holding, most of them, I'd say like 99% bought somewhere in this blow off top. And everyone else was just dumping on their asses. And
I told you to keep that private, Don. Come on, man. On air.
Sorry about that. Just had to vent.
I think the biggest thing, if it's kind of worth the long-term fight, the biggest positive thing would be to see DeFi come out of all of this ahead, like as just identifying, hey, using these open protocols to create markets is really interesting and overall good, that would be a nice outcome, but it's going to be years before that stuff has any opportunity.
Those lads are too busy buying mansions and comparing who's got the better mansion, Ledger,
Yeah, you mean the people that are in charge of those protocols?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't help, that's for sure.
I mean, this is basically DeFi perp. Beautiful.
Yeah. Can't even see it. It's down below Cred's head.
Yeah, I have to make it like this. But then you don't see like the severity of the situation, right? Because DeFi perp is down 90% since the top. And
yeah, but if you stake the rewards, Don.
Yeah, I don't know if that works. It's the same with masternodes back in the day for the people that have been around for a while.
I had the worst tweet ever about that because right sort of before the second leg of DeFi Summer, I said, this is just a lot like masternodes, and got blown up in the comments, and DeFi proceeded to like 10x or whatever. And so I took some flack for that. But it's kind of the same thing, right? So like you don't sell by staking, and it's supposed to make you hold by making you feel like it's alleviating sell pressure by giving you tokens, while people actually just dump those tokens, and so it ends up in a lose-lose. But it's a nice feeling of like, oh well, of course I'm going to hold this because I'm getting free coins. Meanwhile, you just get dumped on. So
yeah, I still remember the Dash masternodes going above $1 million per masternode in 2017.
Yeah,
wasn't there like a thread XTC with the cars? Do you guys remember this? I think it was XTC or XCC, whatever, with the cars, like what can you buy with a masternode?
Yes, it was like Lambo, and then it was like groceries. Oh man, so much.
Oh yeah, I mean it went from like barely any car to like a Lambo, and then above a Lambo, and then it went back to groceries. That was so wild. Yeah, good old times.
Well, let's leave it there. Thanks for joining us, and good to talk to you both. I think we'll be back next week. Any other parting words?
Sorry for depressing everyone that was listening.
Yeah.
It's been a while that like
Once again, we are hoping that we mark a bottom.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, like, we've been doing this for weeks. Like, these
it
these
started
shows
at like
have
45K. People are like, "Oh, this is a bottom show." Yeah, it's been a minute, but we'll see. Yeah, hopefully it's a bottom. FOMC, CPI, suck your mom, all that good stuff goes really well, and we moon. But who knows? If in doubt, just type 4 on Twitter, and apparently that makes all your problems.
That's working really well.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see y'all later. Thanks so much. Hit like and subscribe, all that good stuff. There's a podcast feed for this show. This is youtube.com/weeklyopen, where you can check us out every week. Get notifications, share it with your friends. Let them know that there's still 3 bozos talking about the market almost every week. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.